Hello there. Today we will start the story The Enemy, written by Pearl S. Buck. She won a Nobel Prize in Literature for her novel The Good Earth. She had a humanistic attitude to the problems of life. Although an American, she spent quite some time in China. This story, The Enemy, deals with dilemmas faced in life. Dilemma means a situation in which a difficult choice has to be made between two or more alternatives. In this story, the doctor had to make a difficult choice between his role as a professional doctor, whose prime duty is to save the life of the person who comes to him, and his role as a patriotic citizen. Eventually, he keeps humanity above narrow prejudices. Prejudice means partial or biased opinion. One might say the writer acknowledges universal brotherhood over everything else. The author has highlighted the fact that nations may be at war with each other, but as individuals, people are humane with feelings. They are generally helpful and show concern for others. The genre of this story is realistic fiction. Now, realistic fiction is a genre consisting of stories that could have actually occurred to people or animals in a believable setting. The story resembles real life, and the characters within the story react like real people. This story is set in Japan, and most of the action takes place at Sadao's place, near the rocky coast, and a few conversations between Sadao and the general at the general's. The story is set in contemporary times, that is, present time. When the story was written, that is, the time of World War II. Let us find out the leading characters in the story. The story revolves around Dr. Sadao Hoki, a Japanese doctor. Hana Hoki, his wife, who is very supportive, responsible, loving, and caring. A wounded American soldier, who is the reason behind the dilemma discussed in the story. The general, who is not only an important character in the story, but also the binary opposite of Sadao. What is binary opposite? A binary opposition is a pair of related terms or concepts that are opposite in meaning. The use of binary opposites in literature is a system that authors use to explore differences between groups of individuals. In most stories, you come across a hero and a villain, and you are shown how the two are different. One might think a doctor's binary opposite should be a patient, but in this story, the two people who are supposed to perform their duties well are the doctor and the general. As you navigate the story, you will see how the two are different from each other in every aspect discussed in the story. Now, there are some other characters also in the story, even though they seem to be unimportant. Some of them play an important role in the development and movement of the story. They also show the differences in people with strong sense of duty and the others whose worries are limited to themselves and their families. Sadao's father, who clearly tells about his expectations from his son and sets the mood of the story. Yumi, the gardener, and the cook are all domestic help. Now, Yumi is young and takes care of Dr. Sadao's children. The gardener and the cook are old. They have been working in the house from the time when Sadao was a child. Then the messenger who brings messages from the general. How can we forget Sadao's children? Even though they are not active members in the story, they are a proof of the love in the family and the added responsibility on the shoulders of Dr. Sadao Hoki. The story is about a Japanese doctor who comes across an injured American prisoner of war. It is difficult for him to decide whether to help him, leave him to die, throw him back in the sea, or hand him over to the government officials. What he does is something that keeps humanity above everything else. A lot of incidents, reactions of people from different backgrounds, movement in time can be seen in the story before the final end of the story. While reading the story, one should look at the following details: the dilemma faced by Dr. Sadao, how his wife Hannah stood by his side in whatever he did, highlighting the fact that they believed in the traditional family values, the role and attitude of the servants, how certain decisions were easy for the servants who were very simple people, concerned only about their duties and earnings. On the other hand, was the doctor, pondering over larger questions of humanity, etc. Then, the attitude of the general, whose acts clearly tell the reader that his only concern is he, himself. He has no values. He is very selfish, absorbed in himself, least bothered about his people, country, or even duty for that matter. Now, many times question comes to explain the island as the stepping stone to the future of Japan. So you must try to be clear in your thoughts about this sentence and its meaning and importance. Finally, the summary. The story begins at Dr. Sadao's house located on a spot of the Japanese coast where he used to play as a child. His father always told him, "Those islands yonder, they are the stepping stones to the future for Japan." As a child, Sadao used to question him that where would they reach from those islands? His father would reply that it was not known as it depended on the future. The future had no limits. It depended on mankind, how it shaped its future. Future depends on our choices and decisions. Japan needed to explore its options outside the country and produce talented people well equipped with the outside world to put Japan on the world map. In fact, Sadao's father sent him to America to learn of surgery and medicine when he was 22 years old. He spent 8 years in America, fulfilling his father's dream. He became a famous surgeon and scientist. Now, Sadao was not sent abroad with the troops during the war. Why? This question is often asked in exams. The answer is because he was perfecting a discovery which would render means make, wounds entirely clean. Another very important reason was that old general might need an operation for a condition for which he was now being treated medically. The general did not send Dr. Sadao because he was afraid that he might need to be operated upon in case of an emergency, and he did not trust any other doctor. Now, there is another time travel to tell about his marriage with Hannah. The two met in America, but he had waited to fall in love with her until he was sure she was Japanese. He knew his father would never receive her unless she had been pure in her race. The marriage had been arranged in the old Japanese way and they were perfectly happy. Now you might wonder why these details are given in the story. Well, these details are given to tell the reader that Sadao and his wife were very traditional and patriotic people, even though they had spent some years in America. That did not change their value system in any manner. They both were loyal to each other as well and had great mutual understanding. Their attire, kimono and haori, their lifestyle, house, everything spoke of their respect for their country and culture. Now, when the two were there outside their house, They saw a man-like figure flung up out of the ocean. He staggered. Staggered means moved unsteadily. Sadao and Henna thought a fisherman had been washed from his boat. In fact, he must be badly torn, that is, injured, due to spiked rocks near the coast. They rushed to help. On a closer examination, they realized that he was a white man, soldier, whose gun wound had been reopened and he was bleeding badly. Now here comes the important question, what to do? Sadao muttered. But even before he could think of an answer, his hands had already packed the wound with sea moss. Put him back in sea, he answered, and Hannah agreed. But none moved. They were afraid that they might be arrested if they sheltered a white man, but they also knew if they turned him over as a prisoner, he would die. It was very difficult to decide what to do. They thought the kindest thing would be to put him back into the sea and let nature decide whether he survives or not. But nobody did anything. They were only staring with repulsion, that is, extreme dislike, upon the inert, inactive figure. The cap had faint lettering US Navy, so it was clear that he was a prisoner of war. Sadao says, if the man were whole, I could turn him over to the police without difficulty. I care nothing for him. He is my enemy. But since he is wounded, again and again he says this thing to tell himself that the soldier is his enemy, but he is wounded. That is what has made the situation and decision difficult. Now remember, Sadao is a doctor whose duty is to do everything to save the life of the person in front of him. What did he finally do with this enemy? Did Sadao hand over the soldier to the police? Was he arrested? Did the soldier die? We will see next time. Till then, thank you and keep enjoying literature.